Hello and welcome to yet another edition of your weekly international current affairs program, Globewatch from the Cameroon Radio Television with me, Charles Ebune, from the Yaoundé office of the World Food Program, a Nobel Prize winning organization which is the largest humanitarian organization in the world, especially fighting hunger. And my guest today on the program is the outgoing country director for the World Food Program in Cameroon, Wanja Kaaria. Thank you very much indeed for accepting to be guest on Globewatch once more. And this should be your last media outing in the country.
Thank you very much, Charles. It's always such a pleasure to be on Globewatch, and indeed, it is my last with you.
Each time I look at your data and the most recent, there is an indication that every day 828 million people suffer from hunger averagely. Is that figure increasing or decreasing?
Charles, you know, it's true that the figure is that high, and unfortunately the figures are not going down because the crises are increasing. Right now we have the ongoing the Russia-Ukraine crisis. We have recently the Sudan crisis. We have other crises globally. We can see the Palestinian one also growing. Closer home, we have the West African region, the ECOWAS countries, the Burkinas, the Malis, the Nigers. So, you find that the crises are growing. Another thing is the impacts of climate change. The impacts of climate change, and we are seeing much more intercommunal clashes, particularly back home. We have also the rising costs as a result of all these crises, rising fuel, food, fertilizer, and we are still struggling to come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So yes, indeed, the figures globally are rising, and so are our figures here in Cameroon. When you compare the figures in Cameroon, the food security situation, let's say about 2018, was about 400,000 people in need of food assistance. Now we are talking of 3 million people in need of food assistance. Similar crisis at home.
You just mentioned one portion of the world, and that is the Sahel area in West Africa. In particular, East Africa, you have roughly 20 million people suffering from hunger or be threatened of hunger because of drought and whatsoever. There is of recent a report which was produced by a group of organizations, the World Food Program included, saying that 5 people in Africa, out of 5 people in Africa, 1 is suffering from hunger, has hunger, food problems. That should be quite worrisome, right?
That is worrisome, and the figures are growing. If you look at Cameroon itself, we are looking at 10% of the population, and the numbers are increasing. We've seen here, because of the numerous crises that Cameroon is hosting. We have in the far north the Boko Haram crisis. We have the Central African Republic refugees. The 2 areas there, those crises have refugees, the Nigerian refugees in the far north and in the east. And you can see the socioeconomic political crisis that we have in the northwest, southwest. The numbers are growing. Unfortunately, these are all compounded not only by conflict, but here we also have severe impacts of climate change. When I arrived here 4 years ago, we only had about 700 people in the far north impacted by the floods. Last year, we had over 300,000. So you can see the severity and the intensity is really increasing. And here also in Cameroon, we suffered from the impacts of the war in Ukraine and Russia. We saw food prices going up. So indeed, those are figures that we need all to be worried about.
In a moment, we'll talk about Cameroon, but some global preoccupations. When you look at the resources available at the World Food Program in terms of food sufficiency, what percentage do you need to complete what is lacking to feed the people in Gaza? You're talking about to feed the people in Sudan, to feed the people in the Sahel or Ethiopia and other parts of the world. Or Syria.
Yes, when you look at the figures, for example, of what we were doing, let's say last year and beyond, we needed about 15 billion US dollars. And now you cannot imagine, we're not even getting to 50% of that, of our resources. So indeed, you can see that the needs are growing and the resources are not commensurate to that. And so globally it's the same, here in Cameroon as well. When we were talking of our needs last year and the years beyond, we were able to mobilize about close to what we needed, maybe about 70–80% of what we needed. This year we are not achieving, that target, and so it is worrisome. And this is always the time to call on donors to really step up, because the needs, more lives will be lost. And if we don't step up the resources, the challenge that WFP has is really deciding who has to eat and who hasn't, because the resources aren't really enough.
When you look at the categorization of people suffering from hunger, women, children, men, which group is the most vulnerable according to you and the documents you have?
When you look at the vulnerability crisis, you will find that majority are children, particularly children under 5. The malnutrition levels are increasing globally. In Cameroon, a country that had...
How many of them, for example, passed away because of hunger?
Well, many do pass away because of hunger, but I think this is something that we would want to avoid. And when you see alarming figures passing, that's when you call it a famine. So we don't want to get that. So a lot of the work that we do is preventive, to make sure that communities are not getting to the stage of extreme hunger, And so in Cameroon, for example, what we are doing, and globally, is to make sure that as we respond to emergency crisis, we have at the same time work on rebuilding communities' resilience to shocks, because that is really the biggest problem. Even when you have extreme hunger, for example, like I'll say like a country like Ethiopia, for example, because of the investments that were made by the government to build communities' resilience, you hardly hear of people dying of hunger that they were, like in the mid-70s, for example. So I think resilience building is very, very critical. And I must say that that's the same path that I've seen the government of Cameroon also approaching in terms of building communities' resilience, resilience to shock and critical responses.
As a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, the World Food Programme, since then, which is your most innovative food availability program you have carved out to solve some of the problems you are talking about too?
So in Cameroon, we have a number of flagship programs. For example, we have initiated a program with the government and with government resources, the school feeding program.
Okay.
The school feeding program, we started it in a very timid, almost timidly. But now what we've done, previously we were bringing in resources, food from outside, and importing all the food resources we needed, or we were getting resources and then trying to also buy externally. But now what we've done with the government is we are doing much more what we call homegrown school feeding, where we are supporting the school meals programs with with food commodities bought locally from smallholder farmers. Currently, we have the program is covering about 200,000 children, starting from a very small figure of even 5,000.
Okay.
Now we are looking at 200,000 and supporting about over 600 cooperatives are supplying to the schools.
Okay. You came to Cameroon roughly 4 years ago as the country director of the World Food Programme. I just want you to paint me a picture of the situation you met and where we are today.
The challenge 4 years ago, don't forget I came in at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. That was a very challenging time.
That was in 2020?
That was in 2020. And don't forget, it is just soon after that that we won the Peace
Laureate Peace Prize. Yeah.
Laureate Peace Prize, because of the work that was invested and done by the World Food Programme at the time. not only in Cameroon, but globally, World Food Programme was the only airline that was providing service to the humanitarian community. We had over 700 flights globally. In Cameroon, we also had our 2 flights here that were supporting the movement of humanitarian workers. And I must say that at the time we intensified the response. I know they were supposed to have been keeping our distances, but I think with the support of the
social distancing.
Social distancing. You remember we were doing.
Yeah, sure.
Remember even during our previous interview, it was during the peak, and we really needed to do quite a bit of.
There was a lot of distance.
Yes, there's a lot of distance, but I must say that we have gone back and forth. We have seen the response of WFP response shoot all the way from 400,000 to over 1 million people. So we've increased, we managed to raise a lot of resources in 2021 all the way to 2023. We raised over 90% of what we needed. And so we're able to scale up rapidly. We moved from a team of about 120, we are now 300 staff. So we've scaled up our operations, and with the support of government, and I must say that we've built very, very strong partnership as a result. And the government is one of our biggest funders, and we were able to receive about $45 million from the government for a period of 2 years. So you can see the partnerships have grown, the programs have grown.
That should be roughly 25 billion.
That is 25 billion, yes, exactly. So you can see the trust we have managed to build, the relationships we have built with partners, the trust with the government, and the communities that we are able to serve. There were a lot of access issues, going into difficult locations.
Sure.
So we managed to negotiate that.
Sure, the government is one of your key partners, but you equally have others you work with. I understand that it's not up to a month now. The U.S. government, through the Agency for International Development, for example, shipped 70,000 tons of 50 kilograms each of food, basically rice. How do you work with other bilateral and multilateral partners to provide stable means to refugee communities in the country, basically in the Minangwawo, in the far north, or Gado Bajere in the east region of the country, most of the Garwa Bulai, most of them from the Central African Republic?
So I must take the time to commend the U.S. government through USAID, who are actually our largest donor right now. But behind them, just one step behind, the second largest donor for the World Food Programme in Cameroon is the Cameroon government. So and we have other partners who have definitely stepped up, who also give us resources to buy food internationally. We have the Japanese, the Chinese, the French, who have been really instrumental in supporting the school feeding programs. We have the Germans. We have a good number, the ECHO, the EU donors. So we have a good but very small, loyal base of donors who are supporting the government of Cameroon and the World Food Programme. But I must say that we also have other partners who may not be giving us resources, but also present themselves in terms of being our partners, implementing partners. We have our cooperating partners are NGOs. We have international NGOs. And we are working with over 20 NGOs. 75 of them are local partners, are local NGOs who we've committed to build their capacity under the project of localization.
One of the high points of your stay here was the visit of UN Food Programme Special Ambassador, the Jordanian princess. How do such events, visits, help you to build bridges? I know that you met with the First Lady, Chantal Biya, and other actors of the food chain and social mobilizers for aid and assistance to flow in.
I must say, Charles, when we have such high-level dignitaries like the Princess of Jordan, Sarah Zayed, come in to a country, to support the World Food Programme, it raises the profile of the organization. not many people in the country knew what the World Food Program does. And we are also not an organization that really goes around beating our chests, this is what we are doing. But with her presence, every corner of Cameroon got to know what we do and wanted to know what we do, because at that time, an opportunity was presented to us to talk about what we do. She went to the far north. She went to Barwa camp. She went to the refugee camps, and she drove around. She talked to refugees, and she was the one now, it was through her as a mouthpiece that helped us really raise the profile of what we do, and also the challenges that we had in terms of raising resources. She met with Madame, Her Excellency Chantal Biya, and she also met with the Prime Minister, with all the ministers, almost all the ministers in the country, and the donor partners and the UN agency partners. And for us, it was not to bring her there to just talk about the World Food Program. I think for her was to also raise the profile of what other UN agencies are doing. So it brought agencies together, it brought governments together, and that was when we were able to rally quite a bit of support behind us, and for people to really appreciate what the role of the World Food Program in Cameroon.
For some time, there was a joint program possibly between the World Food Program, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations called Telefood. I don't see it happening again, as in been abandoned, where it was a kind of solidarity movement for people to raise funds to ensure that there is food sustainability for the most vulnerable of communities. What is happening?
The FAO is one of our strongest partners.
Okay.
And if you can know, we are actually a baby of the FAO. We were originally FAO, and we branched out to be the humanitarian part that grew larger. And the partnership has continued. Okay. Because while the World Food Program works on accessibility, making sure people eat, FAO assures of the availability, works behind the scenes on agriculture production, boosting productivity, the food chain. And we have continued to work together on various other projects. We are currently working with them on a project supporting school children with milk, yogurt production, and they are the ones behind the scenes working with the smallholder livestock farmers to bring them into cooperatives, support them into the production of milk. And so we are buying that yogurt for children. So there are many activities, even the smallholder farmers that we are working with. It's the capacity that the FAO is providing together with the Ministry of Agriculture that's really allowing us to increase the production of smallholder farmers, and we step in as the buyer. Okay. So we provide that opportunity, the market that the smallholder farmers need.
In the moment the interview will be coming to an end, you made several field trips in the country, possibly in the far north, Minawawu, you were in Gado Bajiri in the east region, Garwa Bulai, northwest, southwest, and other parts of the country where the food security situation is not the best. What actually did you see on the field over the years?
I have had the privilege of going to locations where many people cannot access. And I've gone to almost all corners of the country, and I read a huge potential in Cameroon. I think the challenges are all, surmountable, but but one thing I want to say that really marked my field trips was a field mission we made to Ngaoundéré with 4 ministers to visit a whole value chain process of school children, which included school children, livestock production, agriculture production, smallholder farmers, cooperatives, all rallying around school feeding programs. We traveled there with a UN flight to Ngaoundéré, with the Minister of Basic Education, Minister from Minepat, Mr. Delegate Minepat, Minister of Women Empowerment and the Family, and the other minister was the Minister of Livestock. So we had a whole team of ministers traveling with us to go and see firsthand for themselves. The other field mission that I really found impactful was when we were going to launch the government project Pulka, which they have entrusted with us. We traveled with the Minister of Minader, and we traveled with the Minister of Minapia to Ngaundere and to Marwa. And we went to the deepest possible locations where we could see firsthand the work that's going on. I just saw a lot of commitment, engagement from the people of Cameroon. But again, what impresses me about Cameroon often is their, the level of their hospitality. They are hosting a lot of refugees, over 500,000 refugees right now. And not once have I heard, like in many countries, them trying to push the refugees back. They've allowed them to resettle. They've supported them. And even more remarkable is that this Pulka project also has a component that supports refugees in the country.
One but last question. You spent 4 years here, possibly. You must have encountered some challenges. If you were to summarize the key challenge World Food Program Cameroon office is facing, what could that be?
I think one of our biggest challenges has been raising resources, because Cameroon has not been viewed as a top priority globally.
Why?
Because of the many crises that exist.
Okay.
We tend to be very invisible.
Okay.
And so the thing about the visit of the princess also was she magnified our presence and the needs in Cameroon. So often it's an uphill task to raise resources for Cameroon. But the other challenge, which I think is also positive, is that the technical capacities in the country are so high. There are so many intellectuals in this country.
Okay.
So when I do recruitment in Cameroon, it's almost like a revolving door. People come in, they get trained, they go international. In 2022, I lost 45 staff, national staff, internationally to WFP. In 2023, I lost 29 staff. So you can see the capacities are high. Even for the UN flight that we have, we are constantly having to recruit colleagues because of the nature of you being bilingual. So it's a plus, but it's also been a very big challenge because we are on constant recruitment mode.
Okay. Finally, this is a question I normally ask most diplomats who leave Cameroon. The former US ambassador told me that he will be missing Cameroonian pepper. When I asked him what he will be missing most, so what will you be missing in Cameroon?
Most of all, the people and the culture. I love the culture, the Cameroonian culture, and I've bought a lot of artifacts, art, let me call them not artifacts, but art from Cameroon. I will also miss Ndole. I will also miss Ndole. I love Ndole. And I think I'll have to be asking my colleagues to pack a bit of Ndole for me when they are coming to, when we are going to encounter them.
Sure.
Yes.
So where are you moving next?
I'm moving into the heart of the emergencies. I'm moving to Haiti. I'm moving to Haiti. So soon I'll be there. I'll be located in Haiti, and definitely the experience I've had here has been tremendous in terms of elevating my capacity to be able to meet that challenge.
And with that, we conclude the interview. The outgoing Country Director of the World Food Program to Cameroon, Wanja Kaaria, thank you very much indeed. Last time we couldn't shake hands. I think now COVID is off, we can shake hands. Thank you very much.
Charles.
Safe trip and safe journey, and a lot of hopes in your new mission in Haiti, in the Americas, and probably we are going to see somewhere around the world.
Definitely, Charles. It has been a pleasure.
You're welcome, madam.